Okay. So we talked about buying a new vehicle, leasing a new vehicle. Now we're going to look at what's involved in purchasing a used vehicle. And there's two ways you can do it. You can purchase a used vehicle from a dealership, or you can purchase a used vehicle privately. Both involve similar things, but also some different things. So used vehicles are often a good option for people that can't afford a new vehicle. Something to keep in mind though, used vehicles generally go down in value, or the financial word that's used for that is depreciates by about 30% during the first year. So like if you buy a new vehicle for $40,000, at the end of the first year, it'll probably be worth around 28. Okay, 30% of its value. Some things you have to keep in mind when you buy a used vehicle. Okay. Often you would want to do what's called a lien search on a used vehicle. Okay, because sometimes if somebody who has the used vehicle is trying to sell it, they may have used it as security or collateral to get a loan. Okay. So maybe they went and got some kind of loan and they said, okay, I'm going to use the value of my house, I'm going to use the value of my vehicle, so that if I can't pay back the loan, you can take my house and my vehicle. Okay. Well, obviously you don't want to run in that situation where you buy a used vehicle and all of a sudden it's taken away by a bank. Certificate of inspection. This is mandatory in Manitoba for used vehicles. Okay. This is basically a certificate that says the vehicle can function. Okay, that it's okay to drive the vehicle. Diagnostic test, that's optional, and that analyzes a vehicle's computer systems. Okay, you don't necessarily have to get that done when you purchase the used vehicle. Some people do. Okay, but some people just leave it alone. When we talk about buying a used vehicle privately, you've got to be aware of something called the book value of the vehicle. And I'll explain that a little bit later on. So if you buy a used vehicle through a dealership, it's really straightforward. You pay the cost that they're going to charge, and you pay PST and GST. They cover the lien search. They cover the safety inspection. Okay. So when you go to a dealership and look at used vehicles, all of them are certified. Okay. They're able to function on the road, so you don't have to worry about purchasing that. So just as an example, very quick example, Jane wants to buy a used vehicle at a dealership. She finds two vehicles she likes. The first vehicle is $4,500, four-door sedan plus taxes, and the second vehicle is a $5,000 SUV plus taxes. So how would I calculate the total cost of the sedan? Right. Remember when we add taxes, we multiply by 1.12. Okay. And so when we do that, we're going to get $5,040. That's how much you pay. Similarly for the SUV, it would be 5,000 times 1.12 for a total cost of $5,600. Okay. And Jade decides, well, you know what? I want a diagnostic test on each one too. Okay. And a diagnostic test costs $50. And she wants to do it on both of them. So how much would that cost her? $100. You have to add taxes as well. So it would be 2 times 50, $100 for the two of them, times 1.12, $112. Okay. This you will get. Okay, you always get this. When you do a lien search on a vehicle, you don't pay any taxes. Diagnostic test, you have to pay both taxes. Safety inspection, you only pay the GST, not PST. Repairs, you have to pay both. Okay? The price of the vehicle, I'll explain that in a second because we have to talk about the book value of the vehicle compared to the selling price. Okay? But that's a table just to keep in mind. Okay. So let's say we're doing privately. So Oliver's considering buying a used car from a private owner. The owner's asking $3,900. The lien search Oliver does on the automobile costs $4. He's got a diagnostic test done and it costs $45. Takes it to a mechanic who says, well, we're going to have to do some work on it and that's going to cost you $1,200. But the seller got a certificate of inspection, so the buyer Oliver doesn't have to worry about paying for the safety. Okay, so we want to calculate the total price Oliver will have to pay for the vehicle if the book value is $3,400. Okay, so the book value is sort of a general agreement on how much vehicles are worth depending on their year and their mileage. Okay. You don't have to sell a vehicle, used vehicle, for the book value. You could sell below it. You could sell above it. Okay. But the province is going to charge you PST on the hire. So let's say you bought, you're going to buy a used vehicle for $5,000, but the book value is $4,000. You have to pay PST on $5,000. Okay. If the book value was $6,000, you have to pay the GST on $6,000. So it's the higher. But right now, we won't talk about the tax right now, the book value. We'll just talk about these extra things, okay? Or actually, no, we will talk about the book value. So the owner's asking $3,900, the book value is $3,400. How much tax? Like what amount does he have to pay tax on? 39 or 34? It's very easy to determine. It's always the higher. 39. Right? So the price, and remember, it's just PST. So 3,900 is what they have to. So what do I multiply by if I want to find the cost of the vehicle and PST? What do I multiply by? Remember, for both taxes, it's 1.12. How much is PST in Manitoba? Come on, you guys. Don't you know how much PST is in Manitoba? 7%. Okay. So to find the cost of the vehicle and PST, you have to go 3,900 times 1.07. and you get 4173. Now we have to find all the other costs and add them up. The Leanne search. $4, no taxes. Diagnostic. The diagnostic. $45, full taxes. So what do I multiply by? 1.12 for whole taxes. And that gives me $50.40. Repairs. Well, the repairs are $1,200, and you have to pay both taxes. So times 1.12 again, and you get $1,344. So we add all these up down here, and we get a total of $55.7140. That's for the cost of the used vehicle based on the selling price because it's higher than the book value. Okay. The Leanne search, the diagnostic, and the repairs, no safety you have to worry about. What happens if the book value is $4,200 and the guy's still selling it for $3,900? You have to pay PST on $4,200. So the price and the PST in this one would be $4,200 times, remember, 1.07, because it's only PST. And you get, oh, sorry, that's not right. I'm only going to, what we have to do here, I made a mistake. Let's just calculate the tax. So when you do that, you get 294. Why did I only calculate the tax and not this included? Because I'm paying $3,900 for the vehicle, right? But I get taxed on $4,200. So I got to figure out the tax on $4,200, but then when I figure out the total, it's the price that I paid for, which was $3,900, plus the tax on $4,200, plus the other things that we put in before. The Leanne search, the diagnostic, including both taxes, and the repairs, including both taxes. So you got to be careful with that. Okay? If the asking price is below the book value, you can do it like A. Use 1.12. If it's below the book value, you have to do it a little differently. And for this one, you get $55.92. And 40 cents. Okay? Okay, so let's review that just one more time. One more example. Rhoda's looking for a vehicle. She's considering two of them. One of the vehicles is at a dealership, and the dealer is asking $3,500 for it. The second vehicle is from a private owner, The private owner is asking $29.95. Rhoda's going to do a Leanne search for $4. She's going to do a diagnostic test. That's $30. She needs some repairs, which will cost $875. She has to pay for a safety inspection this time, which will cost her $40. And the book value of the car is $3,500. Well, dealership is easy. We don't have to worry about all those extras. It's just the price of the car times 1.12 for both taxes. And that gives us 39.20. Straightforward from the dealership. Private owner, more complicated. First of all, what's the price that the owner, that the seller is asking? Right, so I'm going to put it like this, $29.95, because they're going to have to add up a whole bunch of costs here. I can't multiply this by 1.07 because the book value is $3,500. It's bigger than the asking price. So the PST is going to be the book value because it's higher, times 0.07. And that's going to get me 245. The Leanne search, again, $4, no tax. Diagnostic, $30. Both taxes, so times 1.12. And we get 3360. Repairs. According to the question, $875. Have to pay both taxes on that. So times 1.12 gives us 980. And finally, the safety is $40. And GST only, because if you remember that table, we don't pay PST on a safety. So what would I multiply by? What's the GST percent? Well, if PST is 7 and both of them are 12, what's GST? 5. So I multiply by 1.05. And I get $42. And then I have to add all those together. And that will get me the total cost of $42.99.60. So you see that it does cost you a little bit more when you're going from a private owner if the vehicles are comparable. Okay? I mean, maybe this vehicle isn't as nice as this one. You know, maybe this one's got some more features on it than this one. So you're willing to pay a little bit more for it. But generally, if you had two identical vehicles, like if they were the same used vehicles, same year, about the same mileage, you'd want to go from a dealership. Okay, because it'll cost you a little bit less. But usually it's just not quite that simple. And then I'm not going to go through all of these in the remainder of this lesson, but you know, I know none of us are mechanics, but there are things that you can do when you look at a vehicle as sort of a consumer who doesn't know a lot about vehicles. So these are the kind of things you can look for the exterior. One thing you want to look at the tires. Okay, if there's still grooves in the tires, that's good. If it's pretty smooth, that's bad. So that's something that you can easily take a look at. Because tires, I mean, you buy a set of 4 new tires, that's easily $1,000 now. And then other things here, interior, okay, that's pretty straightforward. Engine, obviously, again, we're not mechanics, but if you move the vehicle and then you look back and you see puddles, that's not a good sign. Okay, something's leaking. So that's something that you can tell. And then, of course, you want to take it for a drive. Okay, and look at these kind of things: brakes, acceleration, handling, transmission, lights, things like that. Okay. So that really takes care of all the stuff we're going to talk about when we're purchasing a vehicle, whether it's new, whether it's used, whether we're purchasing, or whether we're leasing. Last things we're going to talk about, the last couple of things we're going to talk about are things like what's involved in maintaining a vehicle, what's involved in insuring a vehicle. And that will take us to the end of the